at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince which standeth for the children of thy people. And there shall be a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation, even to that same time. And at that time thy people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book. And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to everlasting contempt. A time of trouble. I've been speaking on a time of trouble, and I thought if we're going to know about the time of trouble that's coming for us before Jesus comes, maybe we should look at some times of trouble that have happened before and how the Lord has delivered people from their time of trouble, such as that text that Sister Cecilia read for us today. A time of trouble. What does the Lord do with that time of trouble? What is going to happen? We looked at Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and their extreme time of trouble. They were thrown in a fiery furnace, and the Lord was with them in there. And the only thing they lost was the ropes that bound them. We looked at Joseph at his time of trouble. For 20 pieces of silver, he was sold as a slave by his brothers. And he went into Egypt. And over 16 years, he went from being a slave boy to being second in charge of the whole kingdom in his time of trouble. And we looked at Elijah and his time of trouble when he went running into the wilderness to hide from the queen. And today, I want to look at Daniel and his time of trouble. He had a couple of times of trouble, and we're going to look at the first time of trouble that he had and what happened. Let me start out by reading from Psalms 105, the first 5 verses. O give thanks unto the Lord. Call upon his name. Make known his deeds among the people. Sing unto him. Sing psalms unto him. Talk ye of all his wondrous works. Glory ye in his holy name. Let the heart of them rejoice that seek the Lord. Seek the Lord and his strength. Seek his face evermore. Remember his marvelous works that he hath done, his wonders and the judgments of his mouth. Daniel was growing up in the kingdom of Israel. He was of royal blood. He was part of the royal family. And he was raised to believe in the Lord. And I'm sure he read that psalm many times. He was raised in the scripture. His parents raised him the right way. They saw that he had healthy, nutritious food and was raised the right way. I was thinking with our son getting married, I was thinking of some of the things that his mother did for him as a little baby boy. You know, it takes a lot of strength, and you ladies understand this a lot more than we men do. But you know, she nursed him for 2.5 years. Yes. And to make sure that he had healthy, you know, he's had very few sick days. And if you want to have a healthy baby, that's the very best way to do it. And don't think it was all pleasure. It was some discomfort there. She had discomfort. And when he was ready to eat. She and I had discussed for many years, and I shared some memories that I had of my own mother. My mother didn't believe in those little jars of baby food. She decided to make her own. And I remember being a little boy and asking her when she was going to start buying those for my little brother. And she says, I wouldn't eat that. I'm not going to make him eat that. She made her own. And so Dolly made her own baby food. And we had a blender, and she'd blend it up. And then she'd put it all in the ice cube tray and freeze it. And 1 cube was a half a portion. 2 cubes was a full portion. And I remember seeing those jars of mashed bananas in the store. And she said, I can mash a banana, and it'll be better than that because you don't know what else they put with that. She was particular. And we have a healthy son, and we gave him to Morgan. And she's got a nice, healthy husband because his mother was particular. Plus, we wanted to raise him in the love and the fear of the Lord. And Daniel was raised in the love and the fear of the Lord. I'm not sure how old he was when he was commanded to be taken captive into Babylon. But he was a young man, and he had some friends. He had 3 friends that went with him. And we look in Daniel 1, and we see, in the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, the king of Judah, came Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, into Jerusalem and besieged it. And he chose captives that he would take with him. And he took some of the vessels out of the temple. And he chose. And 4 that he chose were these 4 children in Judah: Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. And those 4 young people were close, and they stuck together not only for companionship and safety, but is it a lot easier to be faithful to the Lord if you're all alone? Or is it easier to be faithful to the Lord if you have 3 or 4 people with you that are all decided to be faithful to the Lord and encourage each other? Because we all have our bad times, our times when we're just fed up with everything and we decide it's time to give up on all this. And you can do that in marriage too, because I know when I was ready to throw in the towel, Dolly wasn't. And she encouraged me. And when Dolly was ready to throw in the towel, I wasn't, and I encouraged her. And we can encourage each other, brothers and sisters. So they get to Babylon. It says here, and the king spake unto Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs. So that had to be a terrible experience for Daniel and his friends. They found themselves in Babylon as eunuchs. And the king spake unto Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs, that he should bring certain of the children of Israel and the king's seed of the princes, children in whom was no blemish, but well favored and skillful in all wisdom and cunning and knowledge and understanding science, and such as had ability in them to stand in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans. So they were going to be taught a new language. They were going to learn the language of Babylon, because they would certainly be a lot more useful in Babylon speaking the language of the Chaldeans than speaking Hebrew. Have you ever been any place where people can't understand you? They don't know your language. It's kind of hard. If I end up in a place like that, I'd like to have Sister Annie with me. She speaks several languages. And it says, now most people would think this was an honor and a privilege. It says here in Daniel 1:5, and the king appointed them a daily provision of the king's meat and of the wine which he drank, so nourishing them 3 years, that at the end thereof they might stand before the king. He was going to give them the best food, the king's food. Why is it then that I look at different history of health and everything, and the people eating the common, ordinary food were healthy, and the kings all suffered from this illness and that illness, and they had the gout, and they've done autopsies, and many of them had diabetes, and many of them had problems with their liver and problems with their kidneys, and they ate real rich food, didn't they? Very rich food. And Daniel and his 3 friends didn't want to do that. They'd been taught at home what was good to eat, what was proper food to eat. I'm sure their mother kept a kosher kitchen. It says in verse 6, now among these were the children of Judah, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, unto whom the prince of the eunuchs gave names, for he gave unto Daniel the name Belteshazzar, and to Hananiah of Shadrach, and to Mishael of Meshach, and to Azariah of Abednego. So they were given Babylonian names. It says, but Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's meat, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested the prince of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. How do you feel when you've made something special for folks and they come sit down at your table and say, well, I can't eat that, and I can't eat that, and I can't eat that, and I can't eat that? Yeah. You kind of feel a little bit offended. You'd worked hard on putting that together, and here it was the best food in the kingdom. And Daniel and his 3 friends, you see, now God had brought Daniel into favor and tender love with the prince of the eunuchs. And the prince of the eunuchs said unto Daniel, I fear my lord the king, whom hath appointed your meat and your drink, for why should he see your face work, liking than the children which are of your sort? And then shall ye make me endanger my head to the king. Daniel, you don't know what you're asking. If you're looking poorly and everyone else is looking good, the king's appointed you for some tasks, and he'll just sit you down and make you eat what you're supposed to. But he'll say, you were supposed to take care of this. Off with your head. And I'm not going to risk my head for you, Daniel. I'll do you favors that I can, but I'm not going to put my head, I'm not going to stick out my neck for you. Kind of reminds me, I've stuck out my neck a few times for people. Have any of you ever stuck out your neck for people? And did they rescue your neck, or did they just leave it laying there? Sometimes one, sometimes the other. Yeah. No, they're not going to worry about your neck. Yes. Verse 12, Daniel and his friends said, "Prove thy servants, I beseech ye, 10 days, and let them give us pulse to eat and water to drink." Water and vegetables and fruits. Just food the way the Lord made it. "Then let our countenances be looked on before thee, and the countenance of the children that eat of the portion of the king's meat. And as thou seest, deal with thy servants." So they were going to put it all on the Lord. I think maybe they were remembering Psalms 105. "For seek the Lord and his strength, seek his face evermore. Remember his marvelous works that he hath done, his wonders and the judgments of his mouth." They were raised to believe in the Lord. And they put the Lord to the test. Because if they failed, would it really be their fault? Or would it be the Lord's fault in whom they had decided to depend? So my friends, in the time of trouble, are we going to be using our own wits? Or are we going to use the Lord's wits? The Lord's wits. The Lord's wits. And we read here, it says, "So he consented to them in this matter and proved them 10 days. And at the end of 10 days, their countenances appeared fairer and fatter in flesh than all the children that did eat the portion of the king's meat. Thus Melzar took away the portion of their meat and the wine that they should drink, and gave them pulse. As for these 4 children, God gave them knowledge and skill in all learning and wisdom, and Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams." That was important in that day. They were faithful to God. They were faithful to his word. And to say for those other captives that were the like of those 4 faithful. You know, you're used to a certain diet, because they had the same diet in Jerusalem as Daniel and his 3 friends did. But here all of a sudden they've had this long hike, this long tiring hike from Jerusalem to Babylon. And all of a sudden they have all this rich food to eat, and they could have all they wanted. And I'm still reminded of this time I was at the Sizzler in Palm Springs. It isn't there anymore. But I was in there to eat. And I heard the staff, I overheard them, and they were looking out the window and they said, "Oh no, here comes Leroy." And I wondered what in the world, and here came Leroy. And he had that tray, you know, they put the plate on, they put his glass on, they put his silverware on the tray. And he went to his table and he put his glass on the table. He put his silverware on the table and the napkins and the plate. He put the plate on the table. And he took that tray to the salad bar. And he loaded that tray with all the stuff from the salad bar. And it wasn't just a little bit, it was heaped. And Leroy probably make about 4 of me. He was a big guy, and they knew him at the Sizzler. And that's what he did. He sat down. He didn't want to have to get up and go get seconds. He had it all on the tray. All on that tray. I hope I didn't give anyone an idea. But anyway, Those other folks, they had all that rich food. I'm sure they had hams and turkeys and roast beef and probably some camels and ducks and chickens and who knows what they had. They might have even had snakes. All those delicacies. And yet they ate their fruits and vegetables and water. Water is a good drink to have. Water is wonderful. And so they were rescued. They were rescued from their time of trouble. It says, "And the king communed with them, and among them all was found none like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Therefore stood they before the king. And in all matters of wisdom and understanding that the king inquired of them, he found them 10 times better than all the other magicians and astrologers that were within his realm. And Daniel continued even unto the first year of King Cyrus." So he served the kings of Babylon and Persia. God says if we're faithful in little things, we'll also be faithful in large things. This was a time of trouble. They had been pulled out of their homes, pulled out from the instructions of their mother and father, and marched miles and miles and miles to Babylon. And when they were greeted in Babylon, they were made eunuchs. And they were told the king's going to give you an education, and the king's going to give you to eat of his own table. And they had the courage to turn down the king's dainties and stand for the Lord, and lived up to their mother's instructions on how they were to eat. So let's remember that as we face our time of trouble, we need to remember what our mothers and fathers have taught us. We need to remember what we have learned from the good book. We need to remember and uphold the Lord, the King of Kings. And we have no fear for those last days.